Hello and welcome to this new video in which we are going to explore our new series called Micron. The Micron series includes several types of libraries, and today we are going to focus on the XY type of libraries. We have here Lost in Guitar Space, which is one of the first XY type libraries that we have released this month. As you can see, it includes an XY pad. There are several different types of instruments in this same category. So we have the XY loops, the XY Playable, and XY Atmos. And Lost in Guitar Space is XY Atmos or XY Atmosphere type of libraries. This means that for the most part, it is advisable to play just one note at a time with this type of libraries, even though there are exceptions. This because the sound sources include some major or minor mood within the recordings, so each sound source may include some chordal content. This is a patch called A Movie Before Your Eyes. And you can see that by moving the XY cursor, I can crossfade through the 4 layers and create a very immersive and evolving atmosphere. These sound sources are generally very long, so they are really good and perfect for visual storytelling, for films, for documentaries, videos. Now, this example actually contradicts a little bit what I said before about major and minor, because this very patch doesn't include any chordal information, so I could do actually chords if I wanted. Even though the resulting sound is very thick, and it depends. I would suggest in that case to use very large chords with notes spread far apart. But if we go to a different snapshot, for example, you will hear that by pressing just one key, I can kind of hear a minor kind of mood. And if I press harder, it gives me more of a major mood. So I can do things like this. Because this patch includes major and minor chordal content, so by pressing softly, I will trigger minor chords. By pressing harder, major. So let's go through the interface for a second. We have 4 layers, and each layer has identical controls. We have the volume, then we have a menu with which we can choose a different sound. And then we have arrows back and forth, with which you can lift through all the sounds, then mute and solo buttons. Of course, the waveform display here, and then this button over here, which reverses the playback. So at this point, you will see that for this very layer, the playback is totally reversed. It starts from the end, and it gets to the beginning after a while. So let's put it back. Then, of course, these letters over here, the layers label, but by clicking them, you see that this one, for example, has a little underline underneath. So by clicking on the letter, I actually can select the layer. And by doing that, I'm actually revealing these controls at the bottom, which are specific for each layer. So these controls are individual for each of the 4 layers. So I can have different pan, pitch, attack, release, and so on for each layer. So let's go through all these controls now. We have pan, obviously, then pitch, then we have attack and release, which are self-explanatory, low pass and high pass filters, and this is the cutoff control for those filters. This is the sample start control. So now I'm selecting layer A, so I can just simply set the start control more or less in the middle. So you see the start is later now. Kind of go all the way to the end. Then dirt is an effect which includes a bit of saturation, compression, and sometimes even distortion. So it's useful in some situations. The special knob controls an effect which is unique for each type of library. So in this case, with Lost in Guitar Space, we have a flanger effect. Then delay and convolution amounts. And this is the menu that allows you to choose among the 150 plus impulse responses. Bear in mind that these impulse responses sometimes can be very long. Therefore, it's not advisable to have 4 long impulse responses unless you have a strong CPU. You can also select a new impulse response by using these arrows. Then we have these controls over here, the pitch band range. So I can select for layer A pitch band of 7. So when I use my pitch wheels, so I have individual pitch for each layer. So I can be 12 for this one and 7 for that one and see what happens. It's quite interesting. And then we have the filter for each layer. This is the filter type. I can put it to bandpass, and now this is the filter for layer B, and this number that we see in the menu is the amount of resonance. So now, when I use my mod wheel, it will affect only layer B. And then these 2 checkboxes, reset on load, allows me to reset all the controls of this specific layer whenever I load a new sound. Random start instead will assign a random sample start point at each key press. So now again for layer B, if we look at it, you see every time I press, it starts from a different point in the waveform. So then we have a step volume for each layer. I can activate it by clicking on this. And now you can hear that only this layer, layer B, is affected by the step volume. Here we have the step numbers. Then we have the preset. We have several presets. We can go through them. And then the speed of the steps. Obviously, you can create your own step effects or use the ones we made for you. Since the cursor is here randomly on the left side, I can reset it to the very center by clicking on this arrow. Now we have some master controls. The portamento, this affects the whole patch. This is the portamento speed. But when I press this button instead, distance between the notes that I play will determine the speed of the portamento effect. So 2 notes which are very close will have a faster portamento, but 2 far apart notes will have a very strong portamento effect. And I can switch on and off on the fly this portamento effect by clicking on this key switch over here, which I believe is B0. So I can do a few notes and then activate it and then quit it and then activate it again. Then we have a master randomization button here. This will randomize everything in the instrument. So let's give it a spin. Now all the sounds are different and the controls are in different states. So this is what we have. This is a very quick way to create new patches, which are very functional and very useful very quickly. I can also use this button here just to randomize the sounds. So everything else will stay the same, but the sounds will be totally randomized. And another way to create patches, other than using the randomization feature, is to just select the sounds using the browser. So I select my layer A and go to one sound. Layer B, go to another sound. Layer C, select another sound. As long as I don't select the same sound for 2 layers. And while the sound is going, I can audition different sounds from the browser. So now my layer C is selected. I can change the sound for layer C. If I want, I can solo it and see just that sound. Or just play it together with all the others and just get the feel of the final result. Now, all these controls are present in every XY type library, just apart from 1 or 2, which we are gonna see later. So let's move to a different type of XY library. Let's go to the playable one. So this is the XY playable kind of library, and that means that I can play chords with this one. And I can still move my cursor here and hear all the sound sources crossfading. Now, the other difference that we have between the Playable and the Atmos XY type libraries is that we can also define the range for each layer. So I can set layer A using these 2 controls over here. Now I can see C1 and C6, but I can limit the range and I can see the colors changing there for layer A. But now I know that I can play layer A from C1 to G3 only, so this is useful when you have for example, a sound source with a lot of bass content and you don't want it to cloud the higher range of the keyboard. And you want basically have these effects here just in the higher range. When you select a different range, you can also press this button over here, for example, let's go to layer A and press this button over here, this will make the sound fade out from the midpoint of the range of this layer. So at this point, this layer goes from C1 to C6. So it means that from around C3, progressively, the sound will start fading out until at C6, there will be no volume at all. And this is for layer A. So this shift voice, when I play this high, is really fading out. When I play C5, it's not there almost. But it is very present on the lower range. Also, I can basically create some kind of keyboard splits if all the layers have different range. So like that, and the particles are just from here to there. So the poly mono button over here is useful when we have sounds like this one here. We have a few sound sources that we have labeled soloist, and for example, if I was to use this one, the Fin guitar, and then I press mono, at this point I will not be able to play chords. And this sound in layer D, the Fin guitar, will be monophonic. And you can see I could basically select this layer and limit its range. And maybe also that, limit its range. And also the first one. So now I have a pad here. This is not a proper legato, but it's a monophonic effect. We have one more thing regarding the XY Playable libraries. Some of them will also support an arpeggiator, especially those type of libraries that have sound sources with a sharp attack dispatch from the analog quarter. You will see the arpeggiator includes all the usual suspects. We have the option to keep the arpeggiator in hold position. So now I've lifted my hands. I can just add my chords. The new chord will replace the previous one. Or I can set it on hold plus. So this will add notes. There is also a MIDI through option with which we can always have the key pressed playing the first time we press the note. We have many types of arpeggiation, many directions, including the chord type. We have this button which allows to follow the played velocity or the velocity that is set in the table over here. So If it's set to velo only, the velocity will be set by how hard I am pressing the keys. And the table will only adjust the velocity in relation to the strength I press the keys. Also, you can see that in the analog quarter, even though it is an XY playable, we don't have the poly and mono button over here. So now we can go to the next type of library, which is the XY loops type of library are pretty different. At first, they look similar in that we have this big XY pad over here, the 4 layers. We don't have a way to reverse the sound, so the reverse button is not present. And we have similar controls over here. We don't have the keyboard's ranges controls over here, and we don't have the random start. We have instead these buttons over here to change the scene, because for the loops library we have a new page, which is the sequencer page. Before going there, let's listen to what this library can do. So I will press C1. Four loops are going at the same time. These are 4 lanes which are relative to each of the 4 layers. So this is for layer A, this is for layer B, and so on. Now these are 16 switches to switch on and off the step of the sequence. You see there are 4 steps here that are off. It means that in these 4 steps, this loop, layer B, will not play. And you can hear it because the Bram sound, you will hear that it stops when the cursor is on step 5. Stop. Stop. So, if I was to switch off these ones, you will hear the drums stopping. And so on. So these are very useful to create some interesting on and off effects for all 4 layers. And these are not 16 notes within one bar. The length of each step is determined by the division control over here. At the moment, each step is 1/4 of a bar long. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And you can see here, this is displaying the number of bars. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So we have 4 bars. I can change this value to 1/8. So now each step there will be 1/8 in length. But when I play, I don't hear really much of a difference. The speed is the same. All I hear is that the 5th step is happening on the 5th 1/8 note of the bar. So the 16 steps remain the same, but because their speed has changed, now this on-off effect is having a different result. So if I go even to 1/16, you will hear it even more. This is more evident when we start using these controls over here and the associated key switches. First of all, let's reset all the sequences using this button over here. Now, when these buttons are on, I am allowing these layers to be randomized when this key switch is pressed. When I press this key switch, the steps on-off switches will be randomized because this switch over here is on. So to be more clear, let's just keep the first button on here for the first layer, and you will hear that when I press this, the steps will be randomized only for layer A. So you can also So this is kind of a temporary improvisation of the steps. If I set it to 1/8, can also just add all of them now that we understand what they are. You can hear these subtle variations in the loop, so the loops are not static anymore this way. We have also these controls over here. This one will allow the second key switch, the yellow one, to operate on this layer. So what that does is this. So according to the speed of the division, it creates this stuttering effect, this freeze effect. While this control will achieve the same effect, but on the very step where we have pressed this blue key switch on. So basically the first one, the yellow one, will cause a stuttering effect on a random step, while the blue one will cause the stuttering effect on the step when we pressed the blue key switch. So and it's fun when we just combine this effect. Just by moving from one scene to the next using these blue key switches, I can create interesting variations. So another thing, especially with the XY loops type of library, it's interesting to do effects like this, like select layer D, where I have my synth melody going on, and then I have the pitch bend of 1 only on this one, while all the other layers have a pitch bend of 0. I can do things like this. Let's go through all these other controls on this side. We can randomize each layer like that. And then here we have this button which will allow or disallow the pitch change for the loop. Now, one thing that we didn't hear in this video yet is the fact that each loop, apart from the rhythmic loops like drums and percussion, each loop comes with major and minor content, the same as the Atmos, the XY Atmos library. So when I press softer, I will have a minor loop. When I press harder, I will have a major loop. These red keys over here will determine the pitch, but also the mode of the loop. So if I press softer, I will have a C minor. If I press harder, I will have a major. Now, going back to this button, when this X is visible, it means that that very layer will not be affected by these keys. In fact, as you can hear, the drums are never changing pitch unless I am pressing this. Now the drums are 12 semitone lower. And now we have these controls over here. These are very interesting because they determine the pitch of the note that stays whenever the tuning button is set to X to off. So whenever the layer doesn't follow when I press a key, then this menu over here will tell the engine what note to play always. If I wanted to have, let's say, the synth stay on a C minor tone, I would have to go to the fourth lane over here and select C3 and make it play minor. At this point, because the key tracking is off, whatever key I press here will not affect the fourth layer, layer T, but will affect basically just layer C, which is the bass layer. So now here what's happening. You hear the bass is changing, but not the synth. So that's very useful when you have, for example, instruments like a guitar riff on one layer and then some chords on other layers. So you can change the chords and keep the riff on the same pitch. Now these buttons over here, they randomize these numbers. We haven't explored these numbers yet, but this is the number of the slice for each step. So at the moment, from 1 to 16, it means that the slices are in order. But if I press this, the synth line will be totally messed up. For example, in this patch over here, I have a synth sound on layer 4, which is doing a kind of melody. But if I randomize the order of the steps, and remember, this is dependent on the division control, so can randomize again. And this works also for the drums. So if I was to randomize these steps over here, you see, now we have a different drum pattern, basically. And I can reset it by clicking on this. Obviously, I can also go and do it my own way and decide which slice will play on each step, and then I can reset it like that. We can notice here this control called beat bass 4/4. If we change this, it will allow us to change the numerator of the signature fraction. So if we go to beat bass 7, since the division is saying 1/4, we can achieve a 7/4 kind of rhythm. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. If you set the division to 1/8, we are going to achieve a 7/8 time signature. 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We could also aid this signature by repeating the slice number 1 on the new bar beginning. Regarding the randomization, we have two controls here, which are relative to the sequence. I can randomize the whole sequence over here. And it's nice to have some delay. When we have a lot of gaps like that. Randomize again. or I can just reset it. And this is applied to the current scene or to all the scenes at the same time. So I can randomize all the scenes at the same time, or reset all the scenes at the same time. And as I said, we can recall these scenes by using this blue key switch is over here from C0 to G0. One thing that I didn't mention is that for every kind of XY library of the Micron series, we have the default output option. So when we set it to separate, then you will have the 4 layers going on 4 different stereo outputs. That's very useful if you want to add your own effects. One more thing is the syncing. So you can have this loop be synced to the host tempo or halftime or double time. Bear in mind this control will affect all layers at once. Now each loop library will tell you best at 110, 130 BPM. This is where we found that not only the Time Machine Pro works best, but we found that because of the style of the loops, it will retain the original intended mood if played at this speed. And every XY loops library will have a different BPM range according to the style of the library. There are a bunch of new libraries this very month when we're starting, and then every month there will be a few adding to the catalog. If you want to know more about it, and so go to audiofier.co.uk. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great day. Bye bye.